All right, welcome back to the show. I'm Sam Sorbo. So I started earlier with this idea that that the communists are anti-education. I got to look this up. How I phrased it. They kill the educated people. That's what the communists do, and and we forget this at our own peril. So I decided that I had a friend named Hangnor who won the Oscar for his portrayal of a Cambodian refugee, a Cambodian translator, I think he was, in The Killing Fields. And if you haven't seen that movie, I highly recommend it. It's an Oscar-worthy film, and that's back when the Oscars actually meant something. By the way, did everybody notice that that nobody's paying any attention to the awards ceremonies anymore? Even Saturday Night Live has started doing sketches basically to try to bring attention to themselves, because it's all going off the rails. Because I think people intrinsically know. Intrinsically, not everybody. There are a lot of dumb people out there, but they went to public school. My daughter joked with me yesterday, but Mom, you went to public school. I'm like, yeah, I'm one of the escapees or something like that. All right, so I decided that I was going to bring. This is the book. This is the book Cambodian Odyssey, written by Hang, who I had the pleasure of working with on a little film years and years ago, before I really understood. Well, I didn't understand what he had gone through. I knew that communism was bad, and I'm not sure how I had figured that out, but I did know that. But I did not understand how precious this individual was. He eventually was killed in a so-called robbery that the LA police basically refused to investigate because this is me talking, but I suspect that they understood that it was a hit job by the Khmer Rouge, by the communists, because he had $200 on him and he was found in a deserted alley. So it clearly wasn't a robbery. And, they tried to say, well, it was a robbery gone bad. That's all that there is to it. No, I don't even think he had $200. He had his money that he had. And this individual survived the torture camps 3 times. He'd never met anybody who had survived them 3 times. He was a practicing medical doctor. He was an OBGYN. He was educated in the south of France. He was a practicing medical doctor in Cambodia, in Phnom Penh, when the Khmer Rouge walked through and made everybody leave the city and put them all out into the rural environment. And he, at that point, to save his own life and the lives of his family, as best he could, he started telling everybody that he didn't have an education, that he'd been a taxi driver. And in the chaos, it was fairly easy to reinvent yourself if you were clever enough to do that. And he recognized that they were taking thinking people and shooting them, taking educated people and shooting them. When they cleared out Phnom Penh, they literally had doctors leaving the hospitals while their patients were under anesthesia and just leaving the patient there on the table. Because under communism, there is no emotion. There's no emotion allowed, except anger, I suppose. In any case, I thought I would read a little bit from his story. I highly recommend this book. He does give a couple of times in the book, he gives a warning that if you have a sensitive stomach, maybe you want to skip that chapter. I've read the entire book. I've actually lent it to people and insisted on getting it back. It is a precious, amazing book that will enlighten you. as I'm going to try to do right now. So one night, when now he's living out in the rural countryside, they've become rice farmers, forced labor, and there were sort of better times and there were worse times. And so, for instance, they had to farm rice and they weren't allowed to eat it. They had to send it into the Anka Lu, who was the power, and then they were allotted a small allotment of rice to the village. They were organized by villages with a communist overseer kind of a thing. One night when we were all under our large mosquito net together, Huoi, between her mother and me, a faint creaking noise came from the pathway outside. Immediately, I was wide awake. It was a bicycle, I decided. Then the creaking stopped and there was a soft knock at the door. I got up to peer through the cracks. It was Niang, the chief of the village. Yes, what do you want? I said. Nor Hung, I know you're a doctor, he said. Please help me save my child. I was silent and afraid. I am not a doctor, I said at last. Your aunt told me you were a doctor. She said you were a doctor in the military with the rank of captain. I don't care what you did before, but now my child has a fever. He's very sick. So come save my baby boy. He's only 11 months old. I thought, that big mouth Kim told the village chief. I was only a student, I said through the door, never a doctor. Niang was losing his patience. Everybody here knows you were a doctor. Now, come on, and don't be scared. Anka doesn't know about your past, and I will never tell. Come on, I'm the leader here. I'll take care of you. Please give me a minute. I did some quick thinking. Niang had come alone, without soldiers. He had a reputation as a good-natured man. Earlier that day, he had asked our work group at the canal site whether any of us had fever medicines, but nobody had answered. He knew I was a doctor even then, but he hadn't singled me out in public. He had waited for dark instead. Huoi sat up in the mosquito net. What's wrong? She whispered. Are they going to take you away? Don't worry, I whispered back, changing from my sarong into trousers. Everything is going to be all right. I followed Niang to his home, which was lit with lanterns inside, the light showing through the cracks. Niang had called on some other medical practitioners before me, and they were standing around the baby. Two of them were traditional rural healers. They were dark-skinned, heavily tattooed, and wore only shorts. They had prepared a green liquid medicine, grinding palm sugar, black pepper, and various leaves together in a mixture with unboiled water. They had fed it to the baby with a spoon. They had also sprinkled what was supposed to be holy water on the baby's forehead. When I came in, they were chanting to drive away the evil spirits. So to be clear, I prefaced this passage with the image of the Khmer Rouge just literally marching through the cities and clearing everybody out and forcing doctors to leave their patients who were under anesthesia, just to leave them open in the middle of a surgery, to leave them for the patients to wake up bleeding to death, basically in excruciating pain. Like that is communism. And don't try to argue with me that that's not the real communism, because that is the real communism, and all the other crap simply devolves into that. That's where it goes. That's the end of the road. And so now this fully fledged doctor is too afraid to admit that he's a doctor. And you have the lack of healthcare. This is why when they pushed through Obamacare, I said, because their offset, their viewpoint, they don't know that this is their viewpoint, but this is the result of something such as Obamacare. There is no need for any more research. We have reached the pinnacle of our medical essays, and there's nowhere else for us to go. So we might as well just stop that and rely on all of our gained knowledge until this point. That is what communism and socialism, which is socialism is simply the pathway toward communism. That's what it is at the end of the road. All right, I'm going to finish this this little outtake. 2 young female Khmer Rouge doctors were also there, in the usual black uniforms and short haircuts. One of them was drawing a white liquid from an ampule marked thiamine into a syringe. Oh no, I thought. Please don't. The baby was lying on a table wrapped tightly in blankets. I pulled the covers back to look. A swollen belly, skin hot to the touch, occasional tremors in the body. Without lab tests, it was hard to be sure, but my guess was meningitis as a secondary condition brought on by the fever. How can I save my son? Niang asked me. Take the blankets away, I said. Your son is too hot. You need to cool him down. Moisten a cloth with cold water and pat with it. No, commanded the Mitneri with the syringe. The baby has a fever because it is cold. Don't take away the blankets. She was wrong, but I did not want to assert myself. She and her comrade were in charge. The one with the syringe wiped the needle between her fingers and approached the child. I winced. It was not just a matter of an unsterile needle. Thiamine, or vitamin B1, is sometimes used in Western medicine as an ingredient in multivitamin treatments, but only in tiny quantities. It is never injected alone. The Mitneri had drawn 5 cc's into the syringe. I doubted that she could read the label on the ampule, which was in French, or that she knew that she was administering an overdose. She dabbed the needle into the unconscious child and pushed the chamber until all the liquid was inside the little boy's body. The traditional healers chanted in a monotone. The Khmer Rouge women waited, sullen and bored. Niang looked at me anxiously, but I kept silent and stayed in the background. The oil lamps cast our shadows on the wall. Outside, the crickets chirped, and the bullfrogs on the lake made their deep croaking noise. The child began shaking, not with light tremors, but with deep, terrible convulsions. It fell into a coma with its unseeing eyes wide open. It twitched for another 5 or 10 minutes, and then it was dead. I excused myself and went outside. I took a deep breath. The chorus of crickets and frogs was louder here. Their sounds came from all directions, filling the night air. I wanted to scream. How I hated it all. If I had told Niang that the child shouldn't get the injection, the Khmer Rouge medics probably would have ignored me. If I insisted, they would have reported me for interfering, and then I would have been taken to Ankalu. To them, anything in an ampule was medicine. If a patient died after getting an injection, it was the patient's fault. What was the purpose of a revolution like that, I wondered? What was the gain? What was the progress when a society went from ignorant herbal healers to monkeys like the Khmer Rouge? What about the kind of knowledge that was taught in medical school? Wasn't it worth anything? Were we supposed to forget that it existed? Maybe, I thought, just maybe if I had been more forceful, the child wouldn't have died. If I had told the medics to stand back, If I had put if I had put confidence and authority into my bearing, they might have obeyed me. Then I could have removed the blankets, cooled the baby down, and prevented them from giving the injection. In doing so, I would have risked my own life, but I would have saved the child's. I hadn't done it. I had protected my own life instead. How I hated it. The country was ruled by the ignorant. Already there were unnecessary deaths. To avoid our own deaths, people like me were doing things we knew were wrong. And as we scrambled to protect ourselves or sought to gain favor with the new powers, the old relationships were torn apart. Doctors broke their professional oaths. Families argued. People like my aunt became collaborators and used their influence with the leaders to satisfy old grudges. I stood in the dark thinking about the new regime. I had already seen more of it than I wanted. What I did not know was that everything that had happened so far was mild and harmless compared with what was still to come. I've said this on this show before. We're in the first crime scene, and they will put us in the van if we don't kick and scream and shout. So we're going to take a quick break here. This is the Sam Sorbo Show. Don't forget that if you are tired of feeding the beast, so to speak, if you want to buy American made, I have a resource for you. Simply email me at buyusmade.protonmail.com at protonmail.com. buyusmade@protonmail.com. You can email me there, and we'll connect. It's part of the solution that I've found. I'm working on some others, and yeah, so there's that. Also, don't forget, if you want, you can simply email me with comments on the show. I'm going to go through some comments later in the show today, because I do appreciate your comments. So don't forget, samsorbo.com is, if you need anything from me, you can find it there typically. And also don't forget my show on Epoch TV, epochtv.com. And then just scroll down till you see my face for my show School's Out with Sam Sorbo. I'm having such a lot of fun doing it. It's completely different from the radio, although it's a lot of my same thoughts, but they're maybe a little bit better hashed out since I write the show myself. Thanks so much for listening. This is the Sam Sorbo Show.